The void of space above Terrace 3 glittered with debris. The oceanic planet's atmosphere refracted the distant sun's light across the wreckage of what had once been an Athetheran battlecruiser. Among the scattered fragments of metal and crystalline technology, a lone figure drifted silently toward the planet's endless ocean below. Nylara to her battle companions, felt her consciousness wavering as she plummeted through the upper atmosphere. The Draylock particle beam had torn through her ship's shields as if they were gossamer, disintegrating the vessel and most of her comrades in an instant. She alone had survived the initial blast, her armor's emergency protocols activating just before she was expelled into the void. Blood, the color of liquid mercury, seeped from a wound in her side, forming perfect silver spheres in the zero gravity around her. Her silvery hair billowed around her face like a spectral halo. The Athetheran warrior's eyes, violet irises that seemed to catch and hold the light of distant stars, remained open, unflinching, as she faced her imminent death. This is an honorable end, she thought, a sense of calm acceptance washing over her. To die in battle was the highest glory an Athetheran warrior could hope for. She had served with distinction in the elite guard. Her ancestors would welcome her spirit with pride. The war with the Draylock had spanned generations. The original reasons were obscured by time: control over mineral-rich asteroids, diplomatic slights transformed into blood feuds. But the conflict had become a constant, defining both species through their mutual hatred. It was all Nylara had ever known, all she had been trained for since childhood. As Terrace 3's atmosphere thickened around her, friction began to heat her armor. She would burn briefly like a meteor before plunging into the depths of the ocean world. There, pressure and cold would claim whatever remained. A warrior's funeral pyre followed by a warrior's burial at sea. Nylara closed her eyes, awaiting the final embrace of oblivion. The sudden jolt shocked her fading consciousness back to awareness. Something had locked onto her armor, a magnetic grapple. Panic surged through her as she felt herself being pulled upward rather than continuing her honorable descent. She struggled weakly, but her injuries and the vacuum of space rendered her efforts futile. Through bleary eyes, she saw a small craft, too small to be Draylock, maneuvering alongside her. Its hull bore markings she recognized with confusion: a red cross on a white circle, an Earth vessel, a medical transport. "No," she whispered, though no sound could travel through the vacuum. She didn't want rescue, didn't want the shame of survival when her comrades had perished. An honorable death was being stolen from her. As the craft's airlock engulfed her, her last conscious thought was one of anger rather than gratitude. The human who had intercepted her fall had no right to deny her warrior's end. No right at all. The pain was excruciating when Nylara awoke. Every nerve ending in her body seemed to be on fire. The agony so intense that her first instinct was to reach for the ceremonial dagger all Athetheran warriors carried. The one meant for an honorable suicide should capture seem inevitable. But her hands found only the soft fabric of unfamiliar medical scrubs. Her weapons and armor were gone. Disoriented, she tried to sit up, only to be forced back down by waves of pain radiating from her side. Her vision cleared enough to take in her surroundings: a small medical bay, compact but well-equipped. The gentle hum of life support systems filled the silence. This was undoubtedly the interior of the ship that had intercepted her. A human entered the room, his movements quick but precise. He appeared male, with dark hair cropped short and eyes the color of Terrace 3's oceans. His expression was focused, professional, as he checked the medical equipment surrounding her. "You're awake. Good," he said, his voice even and calm. "I was concerned about the cellular degradation from vacuum exposure." Nylara tried to speak, but her throat was parched. The human noticed and offered a small cup of water. She hesitated, then took it, the survival instinct momentarily overriding her anger. "Why?" she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper, the Athetheran accent giving the simple word a musical quality, despite her condition. The human raised an eyebrow. "Why what? Why did I save you? Because you were dying, and I'm a medic. It's what I do." "I was meant to die," Nilara said, each word painful. "An honorable death. You had no right." The human sighed, checking a monitor displaying unfamiliar readings, likely her vital signs. "My name is Elliot Drake, former Earth Alliance combat medic, now independent contractor. And from where I stand, there's nothing honorable about dying when you don't have to." Nilara turned her face away, unable to articulate the cultural chasm between them. To an Athetheran, especially one of her lineage and rank, survival at the cost of honor was worse than any physical pain. And this human, this Elliot Drake, had condemned her to that shame. "The Draylock ship that hit your cruiser is still in the area," Elliot continued, apparently unaware or unconcerned with her inner turmoil. "We're running silent for now, but we'll need to move soon. This medical transport, the Nomad, isn't equipped for combat." "Then you will die as well," Nilara said flatly. "The Draylock do not show mercy to those who aid their enemies." Elliot's mouth quirked into a small, humorless smile. "I am aware of Draylock policy, but I've survived in war zones a long time by being smarter, not stronger." He adjusted something on one of the machines. "Rest. We'll be making a run for the ionosphere in about an hour. It's going to be a rough ride." As he turned to leave, Nilara felt a fresh wave of anger. "I am Nilarath of the House of Athar, Royal Guard of Athethera. You will return my weapons and allow me an honorable end." Elliot paused at the doorway, looking back at her, with something like compassion in his eyes. "Sorry, Nilarath of the House of Athar. I don't facilitate suicides. It's against my professional ethics." When he had gone, Nilara closed her eyes, fighting back tears of rage and humiliation. She had been robbed of her warrior's death, and was now at the mercy of a human who couldn't possibly understand what that meant. She was trapped in a vessel being hunted by Draylock forces, with injuries that rendered her nearly helpless. She had never felt more dishonored in her life. The proximity alarm's shrill bleat jerked Nilara from her uneasy sleep. Elliot rushed into the medical bay, his earlier calm demeanor replaced by tight-lipped urgency. "Draylock's scout ship just pinged us with a recognition beam," he said, moving to the medical bed's control panel. "They're ordering us to power down for boarding and inspection." Nilara felt her muscles tense. Being captured by the Draylock would mean torture before death, and not the honorable kind. Despite her conflict about survival, instinct took over. "How far are we from the ionosphere?" she asked, her voice stronger than before. 3 minutes at full burn," Elliot replied, disconnecting monitors from her body. "But they'll catch us before that." Nilara forced herself to sit up, ignoring the stabbing pain in her side. "Do you have cloaking capabilities?" "Partial. Medical transports have heat signature dampeners to prevent targeting in conflict zones." "That might be enough," she said. "Kill all power, including life support. Let them think we're dead in space." Elliot looked skeptical. "And when they board us anyway?" "They won't. Not immediately." Nilara swung her legs over the side of the bed, fighting a wave of dizziness. "Draylock procedures require scanning for traps before boarding. While they're scanning, restart your engines and dive straight into the ionosphere. The electrical activity will create a sensor shadow." "That's..." Elliot paused, calculations running behind his eyes. "Actually, that might work. But you shouldn't be moving." "I am a warrior of Athethera," Nilara said, with as much dignity as she could muster in her weakened state. "I will not lie helpless while others fight." Elliot looked like he wanted to argue, but instead nodded curtly. "Fine, but I'm giving you a temporary pain blocker. It won't last long, and you'll pay for it later. But it'll keep you functioning." He pressed a hypo-injector to her neck. Almost immediately, a cool numbness spread through her body, dulling the agony to a manageable ache. "Can you make it to the cockpit?" he asked. In response, Nilara stood, swaying slightly but remaining upright through sheer will. Elliot led the way through the compact vessel to a small cockpit fitted with 2 pilot seats. Through the view screen, the blue-green curve of Terrace 3 dominated the view, with the ominous silhouette of a Drelok scout ship growing larger. 60 seconds to scan range, Elliot said, sliding into the pilot's chair and flipping switches rapidly. Powering down in 3, 2, 1. The ship went dark and silent. Even the air circulators ceased their constant hum. In the sudden stillness, Nilara could hear her own heartbeat and Elliot's measured breathing beside her. "Now we drift," he whispered, "and hope they buy it." Minutes passed in tense silence. The Drelok ship grew closer, its angular, predatory design distinct against the planet's surface. A pale scanning beam swept over the Nomad once, twice. "They're running a bioscan," Nilara whispered. "The medical bay is shielded, yes?" Elliot nodded. "Lead-lined. Standard for radiation treatments." "Good. Otherwise, they'd detect our life signs." The Drelok ship continued its approach, then suddenly paused, hovering at a distance that suggested caution. "They think we're rigged to explode," Nilara explained, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Drelok are paranoid about booby traps." "That buys us maybe 20 seconds, Elliot replied. "Get ready." His hands hovered over the ignition controls, eyes fixed on the Drelok vessel's movements. When it began a slow circle around the Nomad, he struck. The engines roared to life, and the small ship plunged toward the planet's atmosphere at full acceleration. Behind them, the Drelok vessel's reaction was delayed, just long enough to give them a head start. "They're in pursuit," Elliot said grimly, as the first warning shots flashed past them. "Hang on. Ionosphere entry in 15 seconds. The Nomad shuddered as it hit the upper layers of Terrace 3's atmosphere. Outside, the air began to glow as friction heated the ship's hull. Elliot fought the controls, keeping their descent at a precise angle. 10 seconds to ionospheric layer," he called over the growing roar. 8, 7. A blast from the Drelok ship grazed their port side, sending the Nomad into a spin. Elliot cursed, wrestling with the controls. 5, 4. Nilara gripped her seat, the pain beginning to break through the blocker as adrenaline flooded her system. 3, 2, 1. Ionosphere. The view screen filled with electric blue light as they plunged into the electrically charged layer of Terrace 3's atmosphere. Static crackled across every surface of the cockpit. The Nomad bucked and shuddered like a living thing in pain. "Activating heat dampeners now," Elliot said, his voice tight with concentration. "Let's disappear." The static built to a crescendo, then began to fade as they descended through the ionosphere's lower boundary. Elliot pulled up sharply, leveling their flight path just beneath the charged layer. "Sensors show the Drelok ship circling above," he reported. "They can't penetrate the ionospheric interference to get a clean reading. We've got temporary cover." Nilara nodded, allowing herself a moment of grudging respect for the human's piloting skills. The maneuver had been executed with precision, worthy of an Athetheran combat pilot. "We need a place to land and regroup," Elliot continued. "I know a mining outpost on the surface. The foreman there owes me a favor." "A human outpost?" Nilara asked, wariness returning. "Helio mining outpost, small operation, mostly automated. Harding runs it with minimal staff. He's discreet." Pain was beginning to radiate from Nilara's wound again as the blocker wore off. She fought to keep her voice steady. "Do we have alternatives?" Elliot gave her a sidelong glance. "Not with a damaged ship and you bleeding through your bandages again. The outpost has medical supplies. I need to properly treat your wounds." Nilara looked down, surprised to see fresh silver blood seeping through her medical garb. The adrenaline of their escape had accelerated her heart rate. reopening the partially healed injury. "Fine," she conceded, pressing a hand against her side. "But I will not be made a spectacle for human curiosity." "Harding isn't the curious type," Elliot assured her, adjusting their course toward a distant landmass on the ocean planet. "He left Earth to avoid people, not meet new ones." As the nomad descended toward the planet's surface, Nilara felt consciousness slipping away again. The last thing she saw was the approaching coastline of a rust-red desert, stretching away from Terrace 3's vast oceans like a wound on the planet's blue skin. The Helio mining outpost was a collection of prefabricated structures perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean. Solar arrays and wind turbines dotted the perimeter, powering the largely automated mining operation. As the Nomad settled onto a small landing pad, Nilara observed that Elliot had been correct about one thing. The place seemed designed for minimal human presence. Elliot had administered another pain blocker before landing, allowing Nilara to walk, albeit gingerly, down the Nomad's ramp. The hot, dry air of the desert hit her, like a physical force after the controlled environment of the ship. Her species evolved on a cooler, more humid world, and the heat immediately made her lightheaded. A single human figure emerged from the main building, walking with the measured pace of someone conserving energy in harsh conditions. As he approached, Nilara saw a weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat, eyes narrowed against the glare. "Elliot," the man called, his voice gruff, but not unfriendly. "Your distress call said you had company, but you didn't mention it was an Athetheran warrior." "Hello to you too, Harding," Elliot replied. "And yes, this is Nilarath. She prefers Nilara. She's injured and we're being pursued by Drelock forces. Still feeling hospitable?" Harding studied Nilara with undisguised curiosity, but no apparent hostility. "Any enemy of the Drelock is a friend of mine," he said finally. "Come inside before you both collapse from heat stroke." The interior of the outpost's main building was blessedly cool, the environmental systems working overtime against the desert's brutal temperature. Harding led them through sparse common areas to what appeared to be a small infirmary. "Not as fancy as your ship," he told Elliot, "but it's stocked with the basics. The automated systems handle most injuries the mining equipment might cause." "It'll do," Elliot said, already examining the available supplies. "We need to restabilize her wound, and then talk options." Nilara sat on the examination table, observing the easy familiarity between the two humans. "You have history," she noted. Harding snorted. "You could say that. This one." He jerked a thumb toward Elliot. "Pulled me out of a collapsed tunnel during the Martian mining riots. 13 hours trapped under rubble, and he crawls in through a gap barely wide enough for a child." "It wasn't that dramatic," Elliot said, preparing medical instruments. "And you've returned the favor more than once, including now." "The Drelock don't come out this far usually," Harding said, his expression growing serious. "What did you do to piss them off?" "Saved her," Elliot nodded toward Nilara. "They destroyed her ship in orbit. I was making a supply run to the Oceanic Research Platform when I saw the battle." Harding whistled low. "You intercepted an Athetheran warrior during a space battle with the Drelock? Your survival instincts are getting rusty." "Drake." Nilara finally spoke. "He denied me an honorable death." The statement hung in the air, heavy with cultural context neither human could fully grasp. Harding looked uncomfortable, but Elliot continued his preparations without pause. "I need to check your wound," he told Nilara. "The quick patch I did on the ship won't hold, especially after our maneuvering." Nilara hesitated, then nodded once, allowing Elliot to examine the injury. The particle beam had cut a deep furrow across her side, missing vital organs but causing significant tissue damage. Her Athetheran physiology had already begun the healing process, but the wound was far from stable. "You're lucky," Elliot murmured as he worked. "A direct hit from a Drelock particle beam usually vaporizes the target completely." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Nilara replied stiffly. I was at the far edge of the beam's effective radius, and my armor absorbed much of the energy. Still, Elliot continued, applying a regenerative compound to the wound. Most species would have died from exposure to space after an injury like this. Athetherans evolved on a world with thin atmosphere and extreme temperature variations, she explained, wincing as the compound began to work. Our bodies are adapted to survive brief exposure to vacuum. Harding had moved to a monitoring station across the room, his attention divided between a security feed and their conversation. Elliot, how long do you think before the Dreylock realize you've landed here? If we're lucky. They're still searching the ionosphere, Elliot replied. But realistically, hours, not days. Their sensor technology is too good, and there aren't many habitable locations on this continent. I can give you 2 days at most, Harding said. After that, the next supply shuttle arrives, and I can't risk the entire operation. Nilara understood the unspoken implication. They would need to leave before they brought destruction upon this place. It was a reasonable position. In his situation, she would make the same calculation. The Nomad needs repairs before we can make another run, Elliot said, finishing his work on Nilara's wound. The hull integrity was compromised during our escape. Harding nodded. I've got fabrication equipment that should handle basic repairs. But where will you go after? Elliot and Nilara exchanged a glance, the question hanging between them. For the first time, Nilara fully confronted the reality of her situation. She could not return to the Athetheran forces, not as a warrior who had survived when her comrades perished, not as someone who had received aid from a human. Her culture's rigid code left no room for such exceptions. I have contacts at Vidian Trading Post, Elliot said finally. It's a neutral zone, multi-species. We could regroup there, figure out next steps. Vidian is 3 days' journey at standard speed, Harding pointed out. If the Dreylock are hunting you, we'll have to be creative, Elliot acknowledged. But it's our best option. Nilara remained silent, contemplating this strange twist of fate. Just hours ago, she had been preparing for the warrior's afterlife, secure in her place in Athetheran history. Now, she was planning an escape route with humans, creatures her people considered primitive and weak-willed despite their technological achievements. You should rest, Elliot told her, interrupting her thoughts. Your body needs time to process the regenerative compound. I will help with the repairs, she insisted. Attempting to stand, her legs immediately betrayed her, buckling under her weight. Elliot caught her before she could fall, his grip firm but gentle. You'll help by recovering your strength, he said. No room for argument in his tone. We'll need your combat skills if the Dreylock find us before we're ready to leave. Pride demanded she resist, but pragmatism, the same quality that had made her an effective warrior, prevailed. She allowed Elliot to help her to an adjacent room, equipped with a simple bed. Why are you doing this? She asked, as he turned to leave. Why risk your life for an enemy? Elliot paused in the doorway. You're not my enemy, Nilara. The Athetheran Dreylock War isn't humanity's fight. I'm a medic. I save lives because that's what I was trained to do, regardless of species or allegiance. Even when that life does not wish to be saved? A shadow crossed his face. I've seen too much death to ever walk away from a chance to prevent it, even if the person I'm saving doesn't understand why. With that, he left her alone with her thoughts and the strange new reality she faced. Alive when she should be dead, allied with a species she had been taught to dismiss, and cut off from everything that had defined her existence. As exhaustion overtook her, Nilara found herself wondering, for the first time in her life, if there might be more honor in survival than in death after all. The alarm came at dawn, a harsh, repeating tone that jolted Nilara from uneasy dreams of falling through endless space. She was on her feet instantly, warrior's reflexes overriding pain and disorientation. Elliot burst into the room, face grim. Drelock scout ships entering the atmosphere. They're running a standard search pattern over the continent. How long until they reach the outpost? Nilara asked, already looking for anything that might serve as a weapon. 20 minutes, maybe less. Harding's activated the outpost's minimal shielding, but it won't fool their sensors for long. He handed her a bundle of clothing. These will fit better than the medical scrubs. Can you move? The regenerative compound had done its work overnight. The wound still ached, but the tearing pain had subsided to a dull throb. I can fight if necessary, she assured him. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The Nomad's repairs aren't complete, but Harding has an alternative. He gestured for her to follow. Come on. They hurried through the outpost corridors, now dimly lit as systems diverted power to the shields. Harding met them in a control room. His attention focused on sensor displays, showing 3 Drelock vessels descending through the upper atmosphere. They're being thorough, he muttered. Standard procedure would be a single scout. They must want you badly. The Athetheran I killed was likely high-ranking, Nilara said. They seek vengeance. Elliot raised an eyebrow at her casual admission, but focused on the practical problem. You mentioned an alternative to the Nomad? Harding nodded. The mining operation uses a network of underground tunnels to transport ore to the processing facility at the coast. The tunnels lead all the way to the secondary landing pad where your ship is docked. How far? Elliot asked. 15 kilometers. The automated transport system can get you there in under 30 minutes. From there, you can reach your ship before the Drelock complete their building-by-building search here. Nilara assessed the plan with a tactician's eye. The tunnels will shield us from their sensors. They're lined with lead and other heavy minerals that interfere with scanning technology. Harding confirmed. It's a natural feature that made this location ideal for mining operations. The solution had elegance, but Nilara saw a flaw. The moment we power up the Nomad, they will detect the energy signature. Not if I activate every piece of machinery in the processing facility simultaneously, Harding said with a grim smile. The power surge will mask your launch signature long enough for you to reach the ionosphere. You would sacrifice your operation? Nilara asked, surprised. Harding shrugged. The facility is designed to go dormant periodically during high solar activity. I'll claim a system malfunction in my reports. Besides, he added, glancing at Elliot, I don't much care for the Drelock. Never have. A proximity alert flashed on the monitors. The Drelock ships were approaching faster than anticipated. No more time for debate, Elliot said. Where's the tunnel access? Harding led them to a maintenance shaft at the rear of the facility. A small transport cart waited on rails that disappeared into the darkness of the tunnel. It's set to follow the main line all the way to the coastal facility, Harding explained. Automated all the way. Just don't exit until you reach the final stop. Elliot clasped the older man's hand. I owe you, Harding. Consider us even, Harding replied. Now go, before those Drelock bastards start shooting instead of searching. As they climbed into the transport cart, Nilara found herself in the unfamiliar position of feeling gratitude toward a human. Your courage honors you, she told Harding formally. May your ancestors recognize your valor. Surprise flickered across the man's weathered face, followed by a gruff nod of acknowledgement. Then, he sealed the access hatch, and the transport cart accelerated into the tunnel's darkness. The journey through the mining tunnels was tense and claustrophobic. The cart moved swiftly along the rails, its automated guidance systems navigating junctions and inclines with mechanical precision. Nilara and Elliot sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts as they traveled deeper beneath the desert. After nearly 20 minutes, a communication device Harding had given them crackled to life. Drelock vessels have landed at the main facility, his voice reported, distorted by interference from the surrounding minerals. They're beginning a room-by-room search. You've got maybe 40 minutes before they reach the tunnel network. Understood, Elliot replied. We're about 2/3 of the way to the coast according to the nav system. I'll hold them off as long as possible, Harding said. Good luck. The communication cut off abruptly. Nilara studied Elliot's face in the dim emergency lighting of the cart. Your friend may die for helping us. Harding survived worse, Elliot replied, but his expression betrayed his concern. He knows how to appear cooperative while revealing nothing important. The Dreylock are not known for their patience during interrogations. No, Elliot agreed grimly. They're not. The cart began to slow as it approached a junction. Warning lights flashed on the control panel. What's happening? Nilara asked, instantly alert. Elliot examined the display. Blockage reported ahead. The system is rerouting us to a secondary tunnel. He frowned. This will add time to our journey. Time we may not have, Nilara said, glancing back the way they had come. Could the Dreylock have accessed the tunnel network already? Possibly. But unlikely they'd know how to manipulate the transport system this quickly. Elliot studied the map displayed on the cart's small screen. The reroute adds only 7 minutes, according to this. We should still reach the coast before they complete their search of the main facility. The cart changed direction, taking a branch tunnel that angled more steeply downward. The air grew noticeably cooler and damp, suggesting they were passing beneath the ocean now. Nilara felt the familiar pain in her side intensifying. The regenerative compound was wearing off, and the jostling of the cart aggravated her injury. She controlled her breathing, using meditation techniques taught to all Athetheran warriors to manage pain. Elliot noticed her discomfort. I have one more dose of pain blocker, he offered, reaching for his medical kit. Nilara hesitated. Her training taught that pain was clarifying, a reminder of mortality that kept a warrior's mind sharp. But pragmatism again won out. If they encountered Dreylock forces, she would need all her physical capabilities. Very well, she conceded. Elliot administered the injection with practiced efficiency. This is the last dose I have with me, he warned. And using it back-to-back like this isn't ideal. There will be side effects when it wears off. I understand, Nilara said as the cool numbness spread through her body once more. My people have a saying, pain delayed is still pain owed. Cheerful bunch, aren't you? Elliot remarked, but there was no malice in his tone. The cart accelerated again, following its programmed route through the tunnel network. As the minutes passed, Nilara found herself studying her human companion more carefully. He moved with the controlled precision she associated with experienced warriors. Yet his hands, now checking supplies in his pack, bore no calluses from weapons training. Instead, they showed the marks of someone who worked with delicate instruments and healing. You said you were formerly with Earth Alliance, she ventured. Why did you leave? Elliot looked up, surprised by the personal question. I got tired of patching up soldiers just so they could go back and get shot at again, he answered after a moment. The Alliance's medical corps started as a humanitarian organization, but by the end, we were just another cog in the war machine. So you became an independent contractor? Something like that. I go where I'm needed, provide medical services to remote outposts, research stations, places the big medical corporations don't bother with because there's not enough profit. A shadow crossed his face. At least, that was the plan. And now, you are fleeing the Dreylock with an Athetheran warrior, Nilara observed. Not what you envisioned when you left the Alliance. A small smile touched his lips. Life rarely goes according to plan in this part of the galaxy. He paused. What about you? Was being an elite guard always your goal? The question startled her. Few had ever asked about her choices. Most Athetherans assumed her path was predetermined by her lineage. I am from the House of Athar, she explained. Military service is our tradition. Excellence is expected. But was it what you wanted? The cart jolted over a rough section of track, giving her a moment to consider the strangely personal question. Want is irrelevant, she finally said. Honor and duty define an Athetheran life. I serve as I was born to serve. Elliot looked like he wanted to pursue the topic further, but the cart suddenly decelerated sharply, throwing them both forward against the restraint harnesses. "End of the line," he announced, checking the display. "We've reached the coastal facility." They disembarked into a large underground chamber filled with ore processing equipment. The air here was thick with the smell of mineral dust and machine oil. Distant mechanical sounds echoed through the space, suggesting the facility was operational, but minimally staffed. "The landing pad should be accessible through the main cargo elevator," Elliot said, consulting the map Harding had provided. "Let's move quickly. Once we're aboard the Nomad, we'll have minutes at most before the Drelock detect us." They made their way through the facility, encountering only automated systems and robotic workers. The absence of human personnel was both a relief and a concern. It meant no witnesses, but also no potential allies if something went wrong. The cargo elevator carried them to the surface level, where bright sunlight momentarily blinded them after the dimness of the underground complex. When Nilara's vision adjusted, she saw the Nomad waiting on a landing pad overlooking the ocean. Beyond it, the endless blue of Terrace 3's seas stretched to the horizon. "Let's hope Harding's repairs were adequate," Elliot muttered as they approached the ship. A sudden high-pitched whine from above made them both look up. A Drelock scout ship was descending rapidly toward the facility, its weapons ports already open. "They found us faster than expected," Nilara said, breaking into a run despite her injury. "We need to launch now." They sprinted for the Nomad as the first energy blasts from the Drelock ship struck the landing pad, sending concrete fragments flying. Elliot reached the ship first, slapping the external access panel to open the airlock. Nilara was seconds behind him, diving through the opening as another blast hit dangerously close. "Get to the cockpit!" Elliot shouted, sealing the airlock behind them. "I'll power up the engines." Nilara didn't waste time arguing about who should pilot. She made her way to the cockpit, dropping into the pilot's chair and activating the launch sequence. The Nomad systems came online sluggishly, suggesting the repairs had been functional but not optimal. Elliot joined her moments later, taking the co-pilot seat and initiating the defensive systems. "Shields at 60% capacity," he reported. "It'll have to do." The Drelock ship was circling now, strafing the landing pad with energy blasts that shook the Nomad even through its shields. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. "Engines at full power," Nilara announced, preparing for vertical ascent. She engaged the thrusters, and the Nomad lifted from the landing pad just as another blast scored a direct hit on the spot they had occupied seconds before. The ship shuddered violently, but continued its ascent. "They're locking weapons for a concentrated burst," Elliot warned, reading the tactical display. "Our shields won't withstand a direct hit." Nilara made a split-second decision. Instead of continuing their vertical ascent, she banked the ship sharply toward the ocean, dropping altitude until they were skimming just meters above the waves. "What are you doing?" Elliot demanded, gripping his seat as the maneuver pushed them both against their restraints. "The Drelock ship is designed for space combat and high-altitude pursuit," Nilara explained, eyes fixed on the navigational display. "Its maneuverability decreases exponentially at low altitudes where air resistance becomes a factor." Understanding dawned on Elliot's face. "You're using the environment against them." "Precisely." Nilara pushed the Nomad faster, flying parallel to the coastline. Behind them, the Drelock ship adjusted its course, following but maintaining a higher altitude to compensate for its design limitations. "There," she said, pointing ahead to where the coastline curved into a deep inlet surrounded by towering cliffs. "A canyon system. If we can reach it, we can lose them in the terrain." Elliot studied the navigational charts. "The canyon is a maze of narrow passages. If we can get inside before they lock weapons again—" "We need a distraction," Nilara said. "Does this vessel have any defensive capabilities?" "Just the basics. A few defensive drones designed to confuse targeting systems. Not much else." Deploy them as we approach the canyon entrance. Set them to mimic our energy signature. Elliot programmed the drones, while Nalara maintained their course, pushing the Nomad's engines beyond their recommended limits. The ship's frame vibrated with the strain, but held together. "Drones ready," Elliot announced. "Deploying on your mark." They were approaching the canyon now, its red rock walls rising hundreds of meters on either side of a narrow entrance. The Draylock ship was gaining on them, its superior speed beginning to tell despite its reduced maneuverability. "Now!" Nalara ordered. Elliot launched the drones. 3 small objects shot from the Nomad's rear compartment, each immediately activating energy signatures identical to the ship's. They scattered in different directions as they approached the canyon entrance. The Draylock ship hesitated, its targeting systems momentarily confused by the multiple identical signatures. In that crucial moment of indecision, Nalara drove the Nomad straight into the canyon, banking hard to follow its winding course. "They're firing," Elliot reported as energy blasts lit up the canyon behind them. Nalara didn't respond, her complete focus on navigating the increasingly narrow passages. The Nomad's hull scraped against stone more than once as she threaded it through gaps barely wider than the ship itself. A plan was forming in her mind as she flew, a tactic she had used in space combat, but never in atmospheric conditions. It was risky, but it might be their only chance. "Do those drones have any explosive capability?" she asked. "Minimal," Elliot replied. "They're designed to emit electromagnetic pulses to disrupt targeting systems, not cause physical damage." "That might be enough," Nalara said. "Is there a way to remotely detonate all 3 simultaneously?" Elliot worked at the control panel. "Yes, but the blast radius would be limited. What are you thinking?" "The canyon walls are unstable," she explained. "Notice the sedimentary layers and erosion patterns? A precisely placed detonation could trigger a rock slide." Understanding dawned on Elliot's face. "Trap the Draylock ship, but we'd need to lure it to exactly the right spot." "Can you control the drones manually?" "Yes, but not with great precision in these conditions. It doesn't need to be precise, just enough to draw their attention to this section of the canyon." Nalara indicated a particularly narrow passage ahead, where the walls showed signs of recent erosion. "Position the drones there, while I circle back to gain altitude for a better angle." Elliot took control of the drones, while Nalara executed a daring vertical climb up one of the wider sections of the canyon. The Nomad protested, emergency warnings flashing across the controls. But the ship held together. "Drones in position," Elliot reported. "The Draylock ship is approaching the target zone, still searching for us." "Prepare to detonate on my mark," Nalara said, positioning the Nomad on a ledge overlooking the narrow passage. From this vantage point, they could see the Draylock vessel cautiously navigating the canyon, its weapons ports glowing with charged energy. 3, 2, 1, now." Elliot triggered the detonation. The 3 drones exploded simultaneously, their electromagnetic pulses combining to create a localized but intense energy discharge. The blast itself wasn't powerful enough to damage the Draylock ship, but it didn't need to be. The shock wave hit the unstable canyon walls, exactly as Nalara had predicted. Cracks spread through the ancient stone, and with a deep, groaning sound, massive sections of rock began to break free. The Draylock pilot realized the danger too late. As the vessel attempted to reverse course, the first boulders struck its hull, damaging one of its maneuvering thrusters. More rocks followed, a cascading avalanche that buried the scout ship beneath tons of debris. "Direct hit," Elliot said quietly, watching the tactical display as the Draylock ship's energy signature flickered and died. Nalara felt no triumph, only the hollow acknowledgement of a successful strategy. She had killed before, many times, but always in direct combat, warrior to warrior. This felt different, necessary, but lacking in honor. She guided the Nomad away from the rock slide, finding a wider section of the canyon to set down. The ship's engines needed time to cool after being pushed beyond their limits, and they both needed a moment to recover from the intensity of the chase. As the systems powered down to standby mode, Nilara became acutely aware of the pain returning to her side. The last dose of blocker was wearing off, and as Elliot had warned, the side effects were significant. Her vision swam, and nausea rolled through her. "The pain is returning," she said through gritted teeth, unwilling to show weakness, but knowing she needed to acknowledge her condition. Elliot was already moving toward the medical supplies. "I can't give you more blocker, but I have something that will help with the symptoms," he said, preparing an injection. "It won't eliminate the pain, but it will make it manageable." As he administered the medication, Nilara noticed his hands were perfectly steady, despite the danger they had just faced. It reminded her again that while he might not be a warrior in the Athetheran sense, he had his own kind of battle-tested courage. "We should be safe here temporarily," Elliot said, checking the ship's sensors. "No signs of additional Drelock activity in the immediate area, but they'll send more ships when this one fails to report in." Nilara nodded, fighting through waves of pain to maintain her focus. "How far are we from the Vidian trading post?" "At our current speed, with the damage we've sustained, about 36 hours. Elliot ran a diagnostic on the ship's systems. "We need to make some repairs before attempting to leave the atmosphere. The hull integrity is compromised in several places." Nilara considered their options. The logical course would be to remain hidden in the canyon system while making necessary repairs. Then attempt the journey to Vidian under cover of darkness. But logic didn't account for the growing unease she felt. Not from the Drelock threat, but from something Elliot had said back at the outpost. "You mentioned earlier that the Athetheran Drelock War isn't humanity's fight," she said carefully. "What did you mean by that?" Elliot glanced up from the diagnostic display, his expression guarded. "Just what I said. Earth has official neutrality in your conflict. Yet Drelock forces use weapons manufactured by Earth corporations," Nilara pointed out, "as do Athetheran forces." A shadow crossed Elliot's face. "Yes. The Earth Consortium sells to both sides. It's one of the reasons I left the Alliance. The official policy is neutrality, but the reality is profit from prolonged conflict." The implication sent a chill through Nilara that had nothing to do with her physical condition. "You're saying Earth benefits from ensuring neither side achieves decisive victory. Some powerful interests on Earth do." "Yes." Elliot's voice was bitter. "The Consortium sells increasingly advanced weapons to both Athetherans and Drelock, carefully calibrated to maintain the balance of power. If either side gained a significant advantage, the war might end, and with it, their profits." Nilara absorbed this information in stunned silence. The war with the Drelock had defined Athetheran society for generations. Countless warriors had died honorable deaths in a conflict she had been taught was existential. A necessary struggle for the survival of her species against an implacable enemy. "Do you have evidence of this?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elliot hesitated, then nodded. "I have documentation, intelligence reports, internal memos, shipping manifests. I gathered them during my last years with the Alliance, planning to expose the operation, but—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "The Consortium's influence runs deep. The evidence was buried, and I was offered an honorable discharge to keep quiet." "Show me," Nilara demanded. He accessed the ship's secure storage system, retrieving a data crystal which he inserted into the main console. Documents appeared on the screen, financial records, communications between Consortium executives and military officials from both Athetheran and Drelock forces. Detailed analyses of how weapon systems were deliberately designed to counter but never overwhelm the opposing side's defenses. As Nilara read, a cold rage built within her. Generations of her people had died, believing they fought for survival and honor. Her own comrades had perished just days ago in what she now learned was essentially a staged conflict, manipulated by alien profiteers who viewed Athetherin and Drelok alike as nothing more than markets for their weapons. "If this is true," she said slowly, "then the foundation of my entire existence is built on deception." "I'm sorry," Elliot said, and she could see in his eyes that he genuinely was. "I didn't plan to tell you like this, but you deserve to know the truth." Nilara turned away, unable to face him as she processed this revelation. The pain in her side now seemed insignificant compared to the crushing weight of this new knowledge. Everything she had been taught about honor, about the glory of dying in battle against the Drelok, it was all tainted by the manipulation of a species she had been conditioned to view as weak and inconsequential. "What do we do with this information?" she finally asked. "That depends," Elliot replied carefully, "on what you want to happen next." Nilara looked back at him, studying his face for any sign of deception or ulterior motive. She found none, only the steady gaze of someone who had already faced this truth and made his choice. "I want justice," she said firmly. "For my fallen comrades, for all Athetherins who have died in this manufactured war. And," she added with some surprise at her own words, "for the Drelok who have also been deceived." Elliot nodded, a small smile of approval touching his lips. "Then, we need to get this evidence to people who can use it. There are representatives of both Athetherin and Drelok governments at Vidian Trading Post. Neutral territory, where they might actually listen before trying to kill each other. Or us." "Will they believe us?" Nilara asked. "A rogue human medic and an Athetherin warrior who should be dead?" "Honestly, I don't know," Elliot admitted. "But Elena Christensen runs security at Vidian now. She's former Earth intelligence, left around the same time I did and for similar reasons. She'll give us a fair hearing, and she has the connections to arrange a meeting with representatives from both sides." Nilara considered this plan, applying her tactical training to assess its viability. The chances of success were slim, but not non-existent. And what was the alternative? Return to the Athetherin forces and resume fighting in a war she now knew was orchestrated for profit? That path had no honor. "Very well," she decided. "We repair the ship and proceed to Vidian Trading Post. But," she added, fixing Elliot with an intense gaze, "I want your word that if we fail, if the evidence is rejected or we are captured, you will allow me the honor of choosing my own end." Elliot held her gaze for a long moment before responding. "If it comes to that, yes. You have my word." The oath sealed. They turned their attention to repairing the Nomad. As they worked, Nilara found her thoughts returning to the moment Elliot had pulled her from the void above Terrace 3. At the time, she had seen it as a denial of her honorable death. Now, she wondered if it might have been the beginning of something more important, a chance to bring true honor to her people by exposing the lie at the heart of their longest war. The cave system deep within the canyon provided natural shelter while they worked on repairing the Nomad. Elliot's medical training translated surprisingly well to mechanical repairs, his steady hands equally adept at suturing wounds or soldering circuitry. Nilara, drawing on her military engineering knowledge, focused on restoring the ship's defensive systems. As night fell over Terrace 3, they paused their work. The temperature in the canyon dropped dramatically, and they retreated inside the ship to escape the biting cold. In the small galley, Elliot prepared a simple meal from the Nomad's emergency rations. "How's the pain?" he asked, noticing Nilara's stiff movements as she sat at the small table. "Manageable," she replied, though in truth each breath sent daggers of fire through her side. The regenerative compound was still working, but the process itself caused significant discomfort as damaged tissue was rebuilt. Elliot didn't press the issue, simply nodding as he set a plate of synthesized protein and hydration capsules before her. "It's not Athetherin cuisine, but it's nutritionally balanced for your physiology. Nilara studied the unappetizing meal with a raised eyebrow. You keep supplies for Athetheran patients? I keep supplies for a variety of species, Elliot explained. In my line of work, you never know who might need help. They ate in silence for a time, the only sound the distant howl of wind through the canyon outside. Nilara found herself observing Elliot with growing curiosity. His willingness to risk his life for her, first in the rescue, then in evading the Draylock, and now in this plan to expose the Earth Consortium, defied everything she had been taught about humans. May I ask you something personal? She ventured. Elliot looked up, surprise evident on his face. Of course. What drives you? Not just to save lives, but to... She struggled to find the right words. To care about justice for species not your own? He considered the question carefully before answering. I suppose it comes down to seeing patterns. When you've treated wounded from a dozen different conflicts, you start to notice that the suffering looks the same, regardless of species. And you start to question who benefits from all that pain. He paused, gathering his thoughts. There was a moment, during the Proxima conflict, when I was treating casualties from 3 different species in the same field hospital. A Draylock soldier, an Athetheran scout, and a human mercenary, all with almost identical wounds from weapons manufactured by the same Earth Corporation. That's when I really started to see the bigger picture. And you chose to act, Nilara observed. Eventually, Elliot admitted. Not as quickly as I should have. Fear can be paralyzing, even when you know what's right. Fear is not something I would associate with you, Nilara said, thinking of his unhesitating dive to rescue her. A small smile touched his lips. Then my poker face is better than I thought. I've been terrified since the moment I saw your ship destroyed. But sometimes, the only way past fear is through it. The simple honesty of his statement resonated with Nilara in a way she hadn't expected. Athetheran culture venerated fearlessness, treating it as the natural state of a true warrior. The idea that courage could exist alongside fear, rather than in its absence, was strangely liberating. I too have been afraid, she admitted, the words feeling foreign on her tongue. Not of death. I was prepared for that, but of living with dishonor, of returning to my people as the sole survivor when so many died. Is survival really dishonorable in Athetheran culture? Elliot asked. It depends on the circumstances. To survive through superior skill or strategy brings honor. To survive through chance or the intervention of others. She shook her head. That is seen as a failure of the warrior's spirit. That seems like a harsh standard, Elliot observed. No allowance for factors beyond your control. It is harsh, Nilara agreed. But it has shaped Athetheran society for millennia. We believe that accepting what we cannot control, including death, is the ultimate expression of honor. And now, Elliot asked quietly, what do you believe after learning about the consortium's manipulation? Nilara was silent for a long moment, the question striking at the core of her identity. I don't know, she finally said, the admission both painful and freeing. The foundation of what I thought was honorable has been undermined. I need to find a new definition. Elliot nodded, understanding in his eyes. That's a journey that takes time. But for what it's worth, I think there's more honor in what you're doing now, seeking truth and justice, than in any battlefield death. The conversation shifted to practical matters after that, discussions of repair priorities and travel plans for the journey to Vidian. But Nilara found herself returning to Elliot's words as they resumed work on the ship. The idea that honor might be defined by one's choices rather than predetermined codes was radical by Athetheran standards, yet oddly compelling. As the repairs progressed through the night, Nilara became aware of a growing connection with this human who had forced her to live when she had chosen to die. It wasn't romantic, though Ethetherans had no cultural taboos against interspecies relationships, but something equally profound, a bond forged through shared danger and purpose. By dawn, the Nomad was as repaired as they could manage with limited resources. The hull integrity had been restored to acceptable levels, and the defensive systems were operational, if not at full capacity. Elliot ran a final diagnostic while Nalara scanned the surrounding area for any sign of Draylock activity. "All systems functional," Elliot reported. "We can take off whenever you're ready." Nalara completed her scan, finding no immediate threats. No sign of additional Draylock vessels, but they will have sent reinforcements by now. We should depart immediately, while we have clear skies. They settled into the cockpit, Nalara taking the pilot's position again without discussion. As she initiated the launch sequence, she felt an unexpected sense of anticipation. For the first time since her rescue, she was moving forward with purpose, rather than simply reacting to circumstances. The Nomad rose from the canyon floor, emerging into the golden light of Terrace 3's dawn. Nalara guided the ship up and away from the planet's surface, plotting a course that would keep them at low altitude until they were far from the last known Draylock position. "If we maintain this trajectory, we can use the planet's magnetic field to mask our signature until we're ready to make the jump to Vidian," she explained. Elliot nodded, monitoring the sensor readings. "No pursuit detected so far. I think your rockslide strategy bought us more time than expected." They flew in focused silence, both alert for any sign of danger. As the kilometers passed without incident, Nalara allowed herself to consider what awaited them at Vidian Trading Post. Would anyone believe their evidence? Would her own people listen to her, or dismiss her as compromised by her association with a human? And if they failed, what then? "What will you do after Vidian?" she asked Elliot, the question occurring to her suddenly. "If we succeed, or if we fail?" He seemed surprised by the question. "I haven't thought that far ahead. Return to my work, I suppose. Though the consortium will likely put a price on my head if we expose them." "You could seek asylum with the Ethetheran government," Nalara suggested. "If they accept our evidence, they would protect you." "Would they?" Elliot looked skeptical. "From what I understand of Ethetheran culture, they're not generally welcoming to outsiders." "That is true," Nalara acknowledged. "But exceptions are made for those who perform great services to our people. Exposing a conspiracy that has cost millions of Ethetheran lives would qualify." Elliot seemed about to respond when a warning flashed on the tactical display. "Energy signature detected, bearing 330 degrees. Too large for a scout ship." Nalara immediately adjusted their course, dropping altitude to use the terrain for cover. "Draylock destroyer," she confirmed, reading the signature pattern. "They've escalated their response." "Can they detect us at this range?" "Not yet, but we can't maintain this low-altitude evasion pattern indefinitely. The Nomad's engines aren't designed for sustained atmospheric flight." Elliot studied the navigational display. "We're still 12 hours from Vidian at our current speed. We need a better plan than just hoping they don't spot us." Nalara considered their options, drawing on her military training. "There's a debris field in Sector 47A, she said, pointing to a region of space ahead of them. "Remnants of an old battle. If we can reach it, we could use the wreckage to mask our signature while we make the final approach to Vidian." "The debris field is at the edge of Terrace 3's gravity well," Elliot noted. "We'd need to break atmosphere to reach it." "Yes, and that would briefly expose us to the destroyer's sensors." Nalara's mind raced through tactical scenarios. "But if we time our ascent to coincide with the planet's rotation, using the terminator line between day and night sides, the atmospheric interference along the terminator might be enough to confuse their sensors." Elliot finished the thought. "It's risky, but better than a direct confrontation we can't win." They plotted the new course, timing their ascent to the precise moment when Terrace 3's day-night boundary would pass beneath them. As they approached the calculated position, Nilara felt the familiar pre-battle focus settling over her mind, a clarity that came from accepting that the next few moments would determine life or death. Terminator line approaching in 30 seconds, Elliot reported. Destroyer still maintaining orbit on the far side of the planet. Prepare for maximum acceleration on my mark, Nilara instructed, hands poised over the controls. Once we commit, there's no turning back. Ready, Elliot confirmed, diverting all available power to the engines. 3, 2, 1, mark! Nilara engaged the thrusters at full capacity. The Nomad shot upward, straining against gravity as it clawed its way toward space. Warning indicators flashed across the console as the ship's frame vibrated under the stress. But Nilara held their course steady. They broke through the upper atmosphere just as the Terminator line passed beneath them. The ship momentarily illuminated by the stark contrast between Terrace 3's day and night sides. Nilara immediately cut main power, letting momentum carry them, while activating only the minimal systems needed for life support and navigation. Destroyer sensors are active, Elliot reported tensely. Scanning patterns suggest they detected something, but haven't locked onto us specifically. Maintain minimal power, Nilara instructed. We're entering the debris field now. The remnants of the ancient battle surrounded them. Shattered hull fragments, twisted metal, and derelict equipment from a conflict long forgotten. Nilara guided the Nomad deeper into the field, using the larger pieces of wreckage for cover as they drifted toward Vidian's coordinates. For hours, they navigated the treacherous field in near silence, every movement calculated to avoid detection. The Dreylock destroyer maintained its position near Terrace 3, occasionally sending out wideband scans that washed over the debris field, but failed to distinguish the powered-down Nomad from the surrounding wreckage. Eventually, the tactical display showed the destroyer breaking orbit, moving away from Terrace 3 in a search pattern that took it away from their position. Only then did Nilara allow herself to release the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They're expanding their search area, Elliot observed, but in the wrong direction. We should remain at minimal power until we're clear of the debris field, Nilara advised. Then, make a direct run to Vidian. As they continued their cautious journey, Nilara became increasingly aware of the pain radiating from her injury. The regenerative compound had done its work, but the strain of piloting and the stress of evasion had taken their toll. By the time they cleared the debris field, her hands were trembling slightly on the controls. Elliot noticed immediately. "You need to rest," he said, concern evident in his voice. "I can pilot from here." Normally, Nilara would have refused, pushing through the pain as she had been trained to do, but she recognized the wisdom in his suggestion. "Very well," she conceded. "Wake me if anything changes." She relinquished the controls, making her way to the small sleeping quarters at the rear of the ship. As exhaustion overtook her, Nilara found herself reflecting on how much had changed in the brief time since her death above Terrace 3. She had learned that her entire understanding of the war that defined her existence was built on manipulation. She had fought alongside a human she would once have dismissed as irrelevant, and she had begun to question the very foundation of what she had always believed about honor. As sleep claimed her, one thought remained clear. Whatever awaited them at Vidian Trading Post, she could not return to the life she had known before, for better or worse. Elliot Drake had not just saved her life, he had irrevocably changed its course. The Vidian Trading Post appeared on the Nomad sensors as a sprawling collection of interconnected structures orbiting Vidian's second moon. Originally established as a neutral ground for commerce between the various species of the sector, it had evolved into a diplomatic hub where representatives of otherwise hostile powers could meet without risking open conflict. Nilara, rested but still in pain, observed the approach from the co-pilot's seat. Elliot had handled the final leg of their journey with unexpected skill, navigating the complex approach vectors with the precision of someone familiar with the route. "You've been here before," she noted. Elliot nodded. "Many times. Vidian is one of the few places where medical suppliers will deal with independent contractors like me. It's also where I first met Elena." As they approached the docking ring, a communication request flashed on the console. Elliot accepted it, and a woman's face appeared on the screen. Human, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. "Elliot Drake," the woman said, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to command. "Your transponder says this is the Nomad, but you're not making your usual medical supply run, are you?" "Hello, Elena," Elliot replied. "No, this is something different. I need to speak with you privately. It's urgent." Elena's eyes flicked to Nalara, widening slightly in recognition of her species. "An Athetheran warrior. Interesting company you're keeping these days." She seemed to make a decision. "Dock at Bay 7. Security protocols will be observed, but I'll meet you personally." The transmission ended, and Elliot guided the Nomad toward the designated bay. "Elena Christensen," he explained to Nalara. "Former Earth Alliance intelligence, now head of security for Vidian. If anyone can arrange what we need, it's her." "Can she be trusted?" Nalara asked, her warrior's instincts automatically suspicious. "As much as anyone in her position can be," Elliot said carefully. "She left the Alliance around the same time I did, disgusted by the same corruption. But she's a pragmatist, not an idealist. She'll help us if she believes it serves the greater good, and her own interests." The docking procedure was completed without incident, though Nalara noted the presence of armed security personnel observing their arrival. Not overtly hostile, but prepared for trouble. Proper protocol for a facility that routinely hosted representatives of warring factions. Elena Christensen met them at the airlock, flanked by two guards whose neutral gray uniforms bore no insignia of allegiance. She was taller than Nalara had expected from the view screen, with the bearing of someone who had seen combat firsthand, rather than merely directing it from a distance. "Medical bay," Elena said by way of greeting, gesturing toward a corridor. "Your Athetheran friend looks like she needs attention, and we can speak privately there." Nalara bristled at being discussed as if she weren't present, but Elliot placed a calming hand on her arm. "She's right about the medical attention," he said quietly. "And Elena's medical bay has the best security against surveillance on the station." They followed Elena through the trading post corridors, passing representatives of various species engaged in commerce and negotiation. Nalara noticed several Athetherans, and even a pair of Drelok in what appeared to be a tense, but non-violent discussion with a human mediator. The concept of enemies speaking, rather than fighting, was still jarring to her warrior's sensibilities. The medical bay was small, but well-equipped. Its design suggesting it served both as a treatment facility and a secure meeting room. Elena dismissed her guards with a gesture, then activated a device that emitted a low hum, an anti-surveillance field. Nalara recognized. "Now," Elena said, turning to face them fully. "Explain why a rogue medical contractor and an Athetheran elite guard are traveling together, being pursued by Drelok forces, and requesting a private meeting with me." Elliot gestured for Nalara to sit on an examination table while he explained their situation. As he spoke, Elena's expression remained neutral, but her eyes grew increasingly focused. When he mentioned the Earth Consortium's manipulation of the Athetheran-Drelok conflict, she showed no surprise, only a grim confirmation of something long suspected. "You have evidence?" she asked when he had finished. In response, Elliot produced the data crystal containing the documentation. Elena inserted it into a secure terminal, scanning the contents with practiced efficiency. "This is comprehensive," she acknowledged after several minutes. "Manufacturing schedules, shipping manifests, communications between consortium executives and military officials on both sides. She looked up at them. You realize that exposing this will make you targets for some very powerful people. We're already targets, Nilara said, speaking for the first time since entering the medical bay. The question is whether the truth can be revealed before the consortium silences us. Elena studied her with new interest. You're taking this remarkably well for someone whose entire cultural identity is built around this conflict. I have had time to process the implications, Nilara replied evenly. And I have seen enough evidence to convince me that honor requires truth, no matter how painful. A small smile touched Elena's lips. Well said. She turned back to Elliot. What exactly are you asking me to do? Arrange a meeting with representatives of both the Thetheran and Draylock governments, he said. Someone with enough authority to act on this information, but not so high-ranking that they're likely to be compromised by consortium influence. Elena considered this for a moment. As it happens, there's an Thetheran diplomatic delegation currently on station for trade negotiations, and a Draylock security attaché here to discuss piracy in the outer sectors. She tapped her fingers thoughtfully on the terminal. Getting them in the same room will be challenging, but not impossible given the right pretext. What pretext do you suggest? Nilara asked. A neutral briefing on consortium activities affecting both species. Elena replied. Vague enough to get them here, specific enough to be credible. She made a decision. I can arrange it for tomorrow. In the meantime, you'll both stay in secured quarters. The consortium has agents on Vidian, as they do everywhere. Thank you, Elliot said, relief evident in his voice. Elena's expression turned serious. Don't thank me yet. Getting them to listen is one thing. Convincing them to act against their own military-industrial complexes is another entirely. Both societies have built economies around this conflict. Then we must appeal to something stronger than economics, Nilara said. Honor for my people, and for the Draylock. She paused, considering what she knew of their adversaries. Pride. They will not take kindly to learning they have been manipulated. A sound assessment, Elena agreed. She activated a medical scanner, directing it toward Nilara. Now, let's address your injuries properly. Elliot's field treatment was adequate, but you need specialized care for tissue regeneration. While Elena treated Nilara's wound with more advanced medical technology than had been available on the Nomad, they discussed the details of the upcoming meeting, who would be present, how the evidence would be presented, contingency plans if things went wrong. Through it all, Nilara was struck by the methodical efficiency of these humans, so different from the emotional, honor-driven decision-making of her own people. When the treatment was complete, Elena escorted them to private quarters in a secure section of the station. The rooms were comfortable but Spartan, clearly designed for diplomatic guests rather than permanent residents. Rest, Elena advised. Tomorrow will be challenging in ways you can't fully anticipate. I'll send someone to escort you to the meeting chamber when it's time. After she had gone, Nilara examined her injury in the room's mirror. The advanced treatment had accelerated the healing process dramatically. The wound was now a pale silver line against her skin, tender, but no longer debilitating. She changed into clean clothing provided by the station, simple garments without insignia or cultural markers, designed for neutrality. Elliot had been given adjacent quarters, but a connecting door allowed them to continue their discussions. As the station's artificial night cycle began, he joined her to review their strategy one final time. How are you feeling about tomorrow? He asked, settling into a chair across from her. Nilara considered the question carefully. Uncertain, she admitted. I have never engaged in diplomacy. My training was for battlefield command, not negotiation. You'll do fine, Elliot assured her. Just speak the truth as you've experienced it. Your sincerity will carry more weight than any rehearsed speech. And if they refuse to listen, If they choose to continue the conflict despite knowing its true nature? Elliot's expression grew somber. Then at least we tried. Sometimes that's all we can do, make the attempt, even when success seems unlikely. That is not an Athetheran sentiment, Nilara observed. We are taught that failure is not an option, that victory or honorable death are the only acceptable outcomes. And yet here you are, considering possibilities beyond that binary choice. The observation struck Nilara deeply. He was right. The very fact that she was contemplating potential failure without seeing it as the end of everything represented a fundamental shift in her thinking. Rest well, Elliot said, rising to return to his own quarters. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. After he had gone, Nilara spent hours in meditation, a practice all Athetheran warriors use to center themselves before battle. This coming conflict would be fought with words rather than weapons, but it felt no less consequential. Perhaps even more so. The fate of millions might hinge on their ability to convince representatives of two warring species to look beyond generations of hatred. As she finally drifted toward sleep, Nilara realized that for the first time since her rescue, she was genuinely glad to be alive. Not just accepting of survival, but actively valuing the opportunity it gave her to potentially end a conflict that had claimed countless lives. If that wasn't honorable, then perhaps the entire Athetheran concept of honor needed reconsideration. Morning came too quickly. Nilara was already dressed and prepared when the escort Elena had promised arrived at their quarters. The escort, a human woman in the same neutral gray uniform as the guards from the previous day, led them through a series of secure corridors to a conference chamber deep within the station. Elena Christensen waited for them outside the chamber, her expression carefully neutral. The representatives have arrived, she informed them. One Athetheran, one Drelok, and a human mediator from the station's diplomatic corps. I've briefed them only that this concerns evidence of external manipulation of the conflict. They're suspicious, but willing to listen. Thank you, Elliot said. We're ready. Elena studied them both for a moment. One more thing you should know. The Athetheran representative is Commander Talara of the High Command. Nilara felt her breath catch. Commander Talara was a legendary figure in the Athetheran military, a strategist whose campaigns against the Drelok had become required study at the War Academy. She was also directly connected to Nilara's house, a distant relative who had sponsored Nilara's admission to the elite guard. You know her, Elena observed, catching Nilara's reaction. Yes, Nilara confirmed. She will recognize me, and she will know I should be dead. Is that a problem? Elena asked sharply. It complicates matters, Nilara acknowledged. But perhaps it also lends credibility to our message. She will know I would not dishonor myself without profound cause. Elena seemed satisfied with this assessment. Very well. Follow me. The conference chamber was designed for neutrality, a circular room with a round table, ensuring no party could claim positional dominance. Three figures rose as they entered, a tall, regal Athetheran female, with the distinctive silver-white hair of the noble houses, a heavily armored Drelok male, his scaled skin the deep green of the warrior caste, and a human woman in formal diplomatic attire. Commander Talara's eyes widened almost imperceptibly as she recognized Nilara. Nilarath of House Athar, she said, her melodic Athetheran voice carrying both surprise and a hint of disapproval. Reports indicated you perished in the battle above Terrace 3. Commander, Nilara responded with a formal bow. Those reports were premature. The Drelok representative made a harsh sound that might have been a laugh. So the Athetheran elite die and return at convenience. Perhaps your warrior's code is not as strict as rumored. Nilara felt a flash of anger, but controlled it. This was exactly the kind of provocation that had perpetuated the conflict for generations. My survival was not by choice, she said evenly. but it has given me access to information that concerns both our peoples. The human mediator, a woman with the practiced calm of a career diplomat, gestured to the seats. Perhaps we should begin the briefing. I believe we all value our time too highly for unnecessary posturing. They took their places around the table. Elena activated the room's security protocols, ensuring their discussion could not be monitored, then nodded to Elliot to begin. For the next hour, Elliot methodically presented the evidence they had gathered, financial records showing Earth Consortium sales of weapons to both sides, carefully balanced to maintain parity, internal communications discussing the profitability of the perpetual conflict market, technical specifications revealing how weapons sold to each side were specifically designed to counter but never overwhelm the other's capabilities. Throughout the presentation, Nilara watched the reactions of the representatives. Commander Talara's expression remained rigidly controlled, but her hands gradually tightened into fists on the table's surface. The Drelok's reaction was more visible, his scales darkening with what Nilara recognized as the species' indication of rage. When Elliot concluded, silence filled the chamber. It was the Drelok who broke it first. "If this is true," he said, his guttural voice vibrating with suppressed fury, "then the consortium has committed crimes against both our peoples that cannot be forgiven." "Indeed," Commander Talara agreed, the rare moment of concurrence between a Thetheran and Drelok noteworthy in itself. "But verification is required. These records could be falsified." "They are genuine," Elena stated firmly. "I have personally authenticated the encryption signatures. These documents came directly from Consortium secure servers." The human mediator, who had remained silent throughout the presentation, finally spoke. "If verified, this information represents a significant revelation. However, it does not change the fundamental hostilities between a Thetheran and Drelok societies. The Consortium may have exploited existing tensions, but they did not create them." "No," Nilara acknowledged, "but they perpetuated and escalated a conflict that might otherwise have found resolution generations ago." She leaned forward, addressing both Commander Talara and the Drelok representative directly. "How many a Thetheran and Drelok lives have been sacrificed not for territory or principles, but for the profit margins of an alien corporation?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. The Drelok was the first to respond. "The blood of my people has been spilled for millennia in this conflict," he said slowly. "To learn that our greatest enemy was not the Athetherans, but those who armed us both." His scales rippled with emotion. "It is an abomination." Commander Talara turned to Nilara, her expression grave. "You were reported as having died honorably in battle. Instead, you return with a human, bearing allegations that undermine the very foundation of our conflict with the Drelok. Explain yourself. Warrior of House Athar." Nilara met her commander's gaze unflinchingly. "I was prepared to die, as honor demanded. This human," she gestured to Elliot, "denied me that death through an act of compassion I did not understand at the time. In the days since, I have learned that the war I was proud to die for has been manipulated by those who profit from our mutual destruction. Tell me, Commander, where does honor lie in such circumstances? In maintaining a blood feud that serves our exploiters, or in seeking the truth, however uncomfortable?" Commander Talara studied her for a long moment, then turned to Elena. "Security Chief Christensen, I require secure communication with the Athetheran High Command. This information must be brought to their attention immediately." "The same for Drelok Central Authority," the Drelok representative added. "Our Archon must be informed." The human mediator raised a hand. "Before we proceed with wider dissemination, we should consider the potential consequences. A sudden cessation of the conflict could destabilize both your economies, which have been structured around warfare for generations. You suggest we continue killing each other for economic stability, the Dreylock asked, incredulously. I suggest caution and planning, the mediator clarified. Peace requires more than just stopping war. It requires building new foundations for interaction. She is correct, Commander Talara acknowledged reluctantly. Our societies have defined themselves in opposition to each other for so long that an immediate end to hostilities could cause as much harm as good. Then we begin with a ceasefire. Nilara proposed. A temporary halt to direct conflict while representatives from both sides meet to discuss terms for a more permanent peace. And during this ceasefire, we jointly investigate the consortium's activities, Elliot added, building a complete case that can be presented to both your governments and to Earth Alliance authorities who aren't compromised by consortium influence. The discussion continued for hours, moving from the initial shock of revelation to practical considerations of how to proceed. Throughout, Nilara observed something she had never thought possible. Athetheran and Dreylock representatives engaged in civil, productive dialogue. There were moments of tension, certainly, and deep-rooted suspicions did not disappear in a single meeting. But the shared outrage at manipulation created a foundation for cooperation that had seemed unimaginable just days before. By the time the meeting concluded, a framework had been established. Commander Talara and the Dreylock representative, who had finally introduced himself as Sub-Commander Vexkar, would return to their respective authorities with the evidence and a proposal for a 30-day ceasefire. During that time, a joint commission would be formed to investigate the full extent of the consortium's manipulation and develop recommendations for a path towards sustainable peace. As they prepared to depart the chamber, Commander Talara drew Nilara aside. Your actions would once have been considered treasonous, she said quietly. Collaboration with humans, questioning the war. And now? Nilara asked. A hint of what might have been respect crossed the commander's face. Now, I find myself questioning whether our definition of honor has been too narrow. Perhaps there is honor in seeking truth, even when that truth challenges everything we believe. She paused. The High Command will want to speak with you directly. I understand, Nilara said. I am prepared to face the consequences of my actions. The consequences may not be what you expect, Commander Talara replied enigmatically before departing with the human mediator. Left alone with Elliot and Elena, Nilara felt a curious mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. They had taken the first step toward what had once seemed impossible. Peace between Athetherans and Dreylock. That went better than I expected, Elena admitted. Though the real challenges are just beginning. The consortium won't relinquish their profitable war without a fight. Let them fight, Elliot said grimly. For once, it can be their blood at risk instead of others. Elena gave him a measured look. Idealism doesn't suit you, Drake. Leave that to the younger generations. She turned to Nilara. Commander Talara has requested quarters for you aboard the Athetheran diplomatic vessel. Will you be joining your people? Nilara hesitated, surprised by her own reluctance. I should, she acknowledged. My testimony will be needed when the High Command is briefed. Of course, Elliot said, though Nilara thought she detected a hint of disappointment in his voice. You have responsibilities to your people, as do you to yours, she replied. The Earth Alliance authorities who aren't compromised need to hear your evidence directly. Elena glanced between them, a knowing expression crossing her face. The Athetheran vessel doesn't depart until tomorrow morning, and the Alliance representative I trust won't arrive for another day. Perhaps you both could use the time to prepare your testimonies. With that, she left them alone in the corridor outside the conference chamber. She's more perceptive than I gave her credit for, Elliot observed with a small smile. What do you mean? Nilara asked, though she suspected she knew. Instead of answering directly, Elliot asked, Would you like to see the observation deck? Vidian Station has one of the best views in this sector. The light from the system's binary stars creates a phenomenon they call the celestial dance. The invitation had nothing to do with their mission or testimonies, and everything to do with simply sharing time together. In a Thetheran society, such personal considerations would be secondary to duty. But Nilara was beginning to question many aspects of her cultural conditioning. "I would like that," she said. The observation deck was located at the very top of the station, a vast, transparent dome that offered an unobstructed view of space. As Elliot had promised, the binary stars of the Vidian system were visible, their gravitational dance creating swirls of stellar material that painted the void in shades of gold and crimson. They stood side by side at the railing, watching the cosmic display in comfortable silence. After everything they had experienced together, the escape from Terrace 3, the revelations about the war, the tense negotiations of the day, simply being present in this moment of beauty felt like a precious gift. "What will you do?" Elliot finally asked. "After the testimony and the investigations?" Nilara considered the question. "I don't know," she admitted. "I cannot return to what I was, a warrior blindly following orders in a manufactured conflict. But neither can I simply abandon my people when they face such a profound transition." "You could be part of building the new peace," Elliot suggested. "Your experience gives you perspective few others have." "Perhaps," she agreed. "And you? Will you return to your medical work among the stars?" A wry smile touched his lips. "If the consortium doesn't arrange an accident for me first. But yes, eventually. There will always be people who need help, regardless of species or which side of a conflict they're on." Nilara turned to face him fully. "You saved my life when I did not wish to be saved. You showed me truths I would never have discovered otherwise. Whatever path I take from here, it has been profoundly changed by knowing you." Elliot met her gaze, the intensity of his blue eyes matching her own violet ones. "For what it's worth, I don't regret diving after you that day, not for a moment." "Nor do I regret surviving," Nilara said softly, realizing as she spoke that it was true. "Not anymore." The space between them seemed to diminish, the magnetic pull of shared experience and growing affection drawing them closer. When their lips met, it was neither an Thetheran kiss nor a human one, but something new, a bridge between different worlds, different perspectives. The kiss was brief, a tender acknowledgement of connection rather than a passionate declaration. When they parted, Nilara felt a sense of possibility she had never experienced before, a future not predetermined by duty or tradition, but open to choice and discovery. "Tomorrow, we both have duties to fulfill," she said. "But after that, we find our way forward." Elliot finished. Together or apart, but always knowing this moment existed. They remained on the observation deck until the station's night cycle began, watching the celestial dance and speaking of small things, memories of their respective homeworlds, stories from their vastly different lives, hopes for what might come after the war. It was, Nilara reflected, perhaps the first truly personal conversation she had ever had, unburdened by rank or protocol, or the shadow of impending battle. When they finally returned to their quarters, it was with the bittersweet knowledge that their paths would diverge, at least temporarily. Come morning, Nilara would return to her people, facing questions and possibly censure for her actions. Elliot would work with Elena to present their evidence to Earth Alliance authorities, who might help dismantle the consortium's war machine. Yet, even as they prepared for separation, Nilara felt something she had not expected to find when she plummeted toward what should have been her death above Terrace 3. Hope, not just for herself, but for her people, for the Dreylock, for all those whose lives had been shaped by a conflict manufactured for profit. In the morning, a formal escort arrived to accompany Nilara to the Thetheran diplomatic vessel. Elliot was there to see her off, their farewell necessarily brief and formal in the presence of others. "Safe journey," he said, extending his hand in the human gesture of parting. Nilara took his hand, but then pulled him closer to whisper in his ear, "Vidian trading post, 1 month from today. Whatever happens, I will try to be here." He nodded, understanding the promise and its contingent nature. Neither of them could predict how events would unfold once they brought their evidence to their respective authorities. But they had created a possibility, a potential future, where they might meet again as something other than a warrior and a medic thrown together by circumstance. As Nilara boarded the Athetheran vessel, she carried with her not only the evidence that might end generations of war, but also a new understanding of honor. Not the rigid code that demanded death over survival, but something more complex and ultimately more meaningful. The honor found in seeking truth, in questioning authority when necessary, in valuing life, even enemy life, for its own sake. The human, Elliot Drake, had saved her from an honorable death. In doing so, he had given her the chance for an honorable life instead, one defined not by how she died, but by the choices she made while living. It was a gift she had not wanted, had not understood at first. But now, as she prepared to face whatever awaited her among her own people, Nilara recognized it for what it was, the most precious gift anyone had ever given her. The stars beyond the viewports blurred as the Athetheran vessel entered faster than light travel, carrying her toward an uncertain future. But for the first time in her life, uncertainty felt like freedom rather than failure. Whatever came next, she would face it not as a warrior programmed for battle and death, but as something more, a being capable of growth, change, and perhaps even peace. And somewhere among those same stars, a human medic named Elliot Drake was beginning his own journey, carrying the same evidence, the same hope, and perhaps the same newfound understanding that sometimes the most honorable path is not the one tradition dictates, but the one conscience demands. The war between Athetherans and Draylock was not over. Not yet. Generations of hatred and misunderstanding could not be erased in a single moment of revelation. The Earth Consortium would fight to protect its profitable enterprise. Hardliners on both sides would resist change. The path to peace would be long and fraught with setbacks. But a beginning had been made. A wounded alien warrior who had accepted an honorable death had been forced back to life by human hands, and in that unexpected survival had found a purpose greater than any honorable end could have provided. Perhaps, in time, her people would find the same, that there was more honor in living for peace than in dying for war.